I'm a 22-year-old woman, and nothing could have prepared me for the battle I was about to fight. Not against some faceless system or a bureaucratic injustice, but against my own mother, the woman who had once braided my hair before school and packed lunchboxes with handwritten notes. The woman I trusted blindly until the day I realized that everything she did was a performance for an audience that never included me or my little sister Chloe. It started subtly enough. After Chloe was hospitalized for what Mom claimed was a dangerous eating disorder relapse, and I, despite being her older sister and having always been her confidant, wasn't allowed near her, thanks to a strategically placed restraining order Mom had filed, claiming I was a destabilizing influence. I couldn't get near Chloe, but I could talk to people, hospital staff, baristas, social workers, anyone who might give me a thread to pull. I began parking across the street from the hospital, waiting through long hours for shift changes, hoping I could catch a nurse or doctor who might talk. One day, I saw Mom leaving the hospital with a woman I didn't recognize, stylish, designer clothes, expensive purse, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Something about the ease between them, Mom's familiar touch on the woman's arm, made me suspicious, so I followed them to a coffee shop, careful to keep my distance so I wouldn't violate the order. I watched through the fogged-up window as Mom pulled out a stack of papers and began pointing to different sections, the woman nodding before signing and handing over a thick envelope that looked far too much like cash. I snapped photos as discreetly as I could. When they left, I waited for the barista to finish wiping their table and asked, trying to sound casual, "Hey, those two women, do they come here often?" The barista shrugged and said the blonde one, my mother, had been showing up a lot lately, always meeting people, always with paperwork. "Real estate?" he guessed. I thanked him and left with a gut full of dread. That night, Dad got a call from his bank. Someone had tried accessing his accounts using outdated information. Old security questions, stuff only Mom would know. The bank caught it as suspicious activity, but it was obvious she was trying to drain him. "She's trying to make it so I can't afford lawyers," Dad said, eyes dark with fury and helplessness. We stayed up all night changing passwords, calling banks, flagging credit reports, but it didn't matter. By morning, Dad's credit cards were frozen, canceled, reported stolen. The next day, Sarah, the hospital's social worker, called me, her voice tight, serious. She wanted to meet in person. We chose a neutral diner downtown, and when she arrived, she looked around nervously before sliding a folder across the table and whispering, "I shouldn't be showing you this." Inside were Chloe's intake forms, multiple versions, all signed by Mom, all with conflicting information, weights that ranged from 90 pounds to 78, medical histories that jumped across years, changes in the origin story of the supposed eating disorder. She kept changing her story, Sarah explained. It's like she was experimenting, seeing which version got the biggest reaction. I flipped through the forms and felt sick. Mom wasn't reacting to Chloe's illness. She was engineering it. "There's more," Sarah said, showing me photos on her phone of Mom buying balloons, cards, flowers, hundreds of dollars worth from the hospital gift shop. "None of it ever makes it to Chloe's room," she added. "She gives them to staff, nurses, administrators, with thank you notes, flattery. She's building loyalty." No wonder the hospital staff treated her like a saint. Sarah's voice dropped lower. "She's not just manipulating the system. She's orchestrating it." I asked Sarah to document everything. She hesitated. Mom had already filed a complaint against her for being biased. "One more and I'm gone," she whispered. Another potential ally neutralized. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about Chloe. Alone, scared, probably being fed lies about me. That's when I remembered the email account we used as kids, one we'd made to write stories together, back when our world was safe. The password was our shared middle name and our birthdays. I logged in, heart pounding, and there it was. A new draft from Chloe, dated just yesterday. "I know you're trying to help," it said. "Mom says you're sick. But I remember what you did when I took those pills. You saved me. She's making me take more stuff now, says they're vitamins, but they make me feel worse. I'm scared. Please don't give up." I sobbed reading it. She was trying to fight, even from her hospital bed, even under Mom's watch. I started typing back, telling her everything about the custody filing, the evidence, but before I could finish, the screen flickered and logged me out. Password changed. Mom had found it. She'd been monitoring the account all along. The next morning, Dad's lawyer called. Mom had filed an emergency motion, claiming I'd been stalking Chloe online and trying to manipulate a vulnerable patient. The hearing was set for the next day. We needed character witnesses, people who could testify to my stability. But Mom had already been one step ahead. My college advisor said she'd heard I was having issues. Former teammates said they were told I'd been unstable. Even my old restaurant manager said someone called asking about incidents with customers. None of it was true, but the damage was done. Desperate, I reached out to Mr. Peterson, my high school chemistry teacher, who had retired. He listened quietly, then said, "I always wondered about your home life. Your mom fooled us all." He agreed to write a character statement, but warned it wouldn't be enough. "She's had years to build her narrative. You've had days." The night before the hearing, Dad and I sat surrounded by evidence: Anne's diary, expired diet shakes, gift shop records, the intake forms, but Dad's lawyer was blunt. "It's all circumstantial. She'll have explanations. Her witnesses will outnumber yours." I thought we were done until my phone rang, an unknown number. A young man's voice, shaky, scared. "Is this Chloe's sister?" "I'm Jake. I'm a nurse. I need to talk to you about your sister." We met at a 24-hour diner, and what he told me changed everything. Jake looked like he hadn't slept in days, his scrubs wrinkled, his hands trembling as he clutched a phone and slid into the booth across from me, glancing over his shoulder like he expected Mom to appear from the shadows. "I could lose my license for this," he whispered, "but I can't keep quiet anymore." He opened the photo app on his phone and showed me images he'd taken during his shifts, Chloe's medication charts, the dosages absurdly high for her body weight, some medications scheduled on an empty stomach when they should have been taken with food. He scrolled to a picture of Mom hovering near Chloe's bedside, her purse open beside her, a cluster of loose pills nestled among tissues and lip balm. "She always insists on being present when Chloe gets her meds," Jake said. "Says Chloe is resistant and needs encouragement, but I've seen her. She crushes things into her juice, stirs powders into protein shakes. She claims they're vitamins, prescribed supplements, but I know what real supplements look like. These aren't that." I could feel my throat tightening, a mix of nausea and vindication twisting in my chest. Jake had even managed to steal one of the pills from Mom's stash, planning to get it tested. "Your sister isn't getting better because of these," he added grimly. "Her body can't process them. They're poison." I begged him to testify, but he shook his head, fear thick in his voice. "She's too connected. If anyone finds out I talked to you, I'm done." He handed me his documentation anyway, photos, notes, timestamps. Then, as we stood to leave, he grabbed my arm. "There's something else. Your mom's been talking about transferring Chloe to some clinic in Arizona. But I checked. The place doesn't exist. The address is just desert." My blood turned to ice. Mom wasn't just trying to control Chloe's treatment. She was planning to disappear her. I called Dad's lawyer, heart racing, but he was cautious. Jake's information was technically illegally obtained. If we used it wrong, it could backfire in court. Unless we get a judge who cares more about procedure than people, it'll hurt more than help. But we had one thing left: Chloe herself. I hadn't noticed it before, but the draft email she'd left me wasn't just a plea, it was encoded. We had a secret code we used as kids when writing stories, capitalizing certain letters, repeating phrases in odd ways. Hidden in her message were the names of the pills, the times Mom forced her to take them, even details Mom shared thinking Chloe was too far gone to remember, mentions of the Arizona transfer, vague threats about what would happen if she told anyone. My little sister had been gathering evidence from her hospital bed. Despite the pain, the fog, the constant monitoring, she had found a way to fight. Then, at 6 a.m., Dad's phone buzzed. The emergency hearing had been moved up to 8. We had less than 2 hours to get there. Everything blurred after that. I remember my hands shaking as I helped Dad tie his tie. The courthouse was shrouded in gray morning mist, the pavement slick under our shoes. Mom was already there, flanked by her Pilates friends and that reporter she'd charmed with stories of being a warrior mother. Inside the courtroom, Madison sat in the back, eyes low, next to the lawyer she'd once gushed about, the same man now representing Mom. Our lawyer looked like he hadn't slept, eyes bloodshot, files spilling from his briefcase. Judge Winters, stern and regal, presided over the courtroom like she had steel in her bones. She'd handled our custody case years ago. I remembered her sharp gaze. Mom's lawyer went first, parading the usual lies. How I had violated the restraining order by hacking into Chloe's email, how I was harassing a fragile patient, how multiple concerned acquaintances had raised red flags about my mental state. Then it was our turn. Dad's lawyer stood, voice quiet but resolute, presenting what we had, and old journals detailing childhood abuse, the intake forms with contradicting medical histories, photos of the expired shakes and Jake's records, but we couldn't directly mention Jake. The medication irregularities, the lawyer said vaguely, indicate concerning interference. Judge Winters kept frowning, unimpressed. This appears to be hearsay, she said coldly. And how did you obtain this email account access, young lady? I opened my mouth, desperate to explain the childhood account, the code, the hidden cries for help, but Dad's lawyer touched my wrist. Don't say a word. If I admitted I accessed it, the restraining order would be unshakable. After 20 agonizing minutes, the judge exhaled sharply. I'm extending the restraining order, she declared. Furthermore, I'm referring this for potential criminal charges. I felt my lungs collapse inward. I'd failed. I could face jail time, and Mom had won again. But then the courtroom doors burst open. Sarah ran in, hair wild, face flushed, clutching a thick folder. Your Honor, she said, breathless, I have urgent information regarding the minor's welfare. Judge Winters looked annoyed, but nodded. Sarah handed over the folder. These are Chloe's most recent medical reports. She's developed refeeding syndrome. Someone has been tampering with her nutritional care. We have video evidence of the mother adding substances to the feeding tube. Mom's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this woman is biased. Sit down, the judge barked. Sarah turned her phone to the judge, showing her the footage. Even from the gallery, I could see Mom, backlit by hospital lighting, crushing pills into Chloe's feeding bag. The timestamp was yesterday, Sarah said. After visiting hours. The room exploded. Mom stood, pointing at me. This is her. She's turning you all against me. I'm saving Chloe. Order, the judge yelled, gavel slamming. Sarah stepped forward. Child Protective Services is requesting immediate intervention. Chloe's life is in danger. The judge didn't hesitate. Bailiff, she ordered. Take Mrs. Mom's last name into custody for child endangerment. Mom screamed, tried to run, shoved over chairs and her lawyer's briefcase, scattering papers across the floor. But the bailiffs caught her, wrestling her into handcuffs as she shrieked about saving Chloe from obesity, from the lies of the fat-loving media. Her voice cracked, shrill and hysterical. And in that moment, even her closest allies recoiled. I glanced back to Madison, who was now crying quietly. She stood and walked to Dad's lawyer. I recorded her, she whispered. The lawyer, too. At dinner last week, he coached me on what to say about Chloe. I can't let this keep going. As she handed over her phone, I finally exhaled. The judge looked at me, her gaze softened. Young lady, she said, your actions were inappropriate and illegal, but they were done to save your sister. I'm dismissing the restraining order and advising the district attorney not to pursue charges. But you are not to contact your mother in any way. Understood. I nodded, tears rolling freely now. As for custody, she added, I'm granting emergency custody of Chloe to her father. Effective immediately. In that moment, as Mom was dragged from the courtroom and Dad was handed the right to protect the daughter he'd been shut out from for years, I felt something in my chest give way. A weight I hadn't known I was carrying finally cracked open, and for the first time in what felt like years, hope began to slip through. The hours after the hearing moved like a fever dream, adrenaline still burning in my limbs as we rushed to the hospital, Dad finally carrying the legal authority to make decisions for Chloe's care. Sarah had already alerted the staff, and when we arrived, everything changed. The nurses nodded solemnly, no longer regarding us with suspicion. One of them, a woman named Hannah, took us to Chloe's room and gently explained the situation. The pills Mom had been secretly adding to Chloe's feed were a toxic cocktail of expired stimulants, laxatives, and diuretics, several of which had been banned years ago. Her weakened body hadn't been able to handle them, and her heart had nearly given out. Chloe lay there, fragile, sunken eyes fluttering under paper-thin lids, machines tracing her vitals in shallow beeps, her skin a pale gray that clung too tightly to her bones. I sat beside her, holding her hand gently, whispering her name like a prayer. Dad sat on the other side, his head bowed, eyes full of guilt and resolve. The doctor told us she was stable but not out of danger. Her organs had been damaged. Her bone density was compromised. Her immune system, already fragile, was dangerously low. The years of restrictive feeding had left her with what he called internal starvation, and combined with Mom's secret supplements, it was a miracle she was still alive. That evening, Jake found me in the cafeteria and slid a test report across the table, his face pale. That pill I took? It tested positive for a banned substance, funfen. It was pulled in 2016 after it killed people at that Nevada clinic. That's what your mom was giving her. I stared at the paper. Poison. Years of Mom insisting she was helping us, saving us from obesity, and she'd been slowly unliving Chloe instead. Police raided Mom's house that night. They found entire storage closets packed with expired diet products, some dating back to the early 2000s, powders, syringes, unmarked pills. And flew in the next day and gave a harrowing statement about their mother, how she'd done the same to them, masked abuse as health regimens, and how Mom had taken that legacy and disguised it as maternal devotion. The prosecutor officially charged Mom with attempted manslaughter, child endangerment, and aggravated assault. But while her empire of lies fell, Chloe still lay in that hospital bed, tethered to life by machines. For days, Dad and I alternated bedside shifts. We played her favorite songs, read her childhood stories, brought in her softest blanket from home. I recited memories of birthday parties and inside jokes, of our shared email account, and the time we got caught sneaking cookies at midnight. I wanted to tether her spirit back to us, remind her she wasn't alone anymore. On the 5th day, her eyelids fluttered open. My breath caught. She looked around the room with glassy confusion before locking eyes with me. "Is Mom coming?" she whispered, her voice a brittle leaf cracking in autumn wind. My heart shattered. Even after all this, even after Mom had nearly killed her, Chloe still sought her approval. "No, baby," I said gently, brushing her hair back. "She can't come anymore." Her lower lip trembled. Did I do something wrong? Did I gain weight? Dad leaned in and took her hand. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. You're perfect. Mom was sick. We're taking care of you now." And still, despite our reassurance, she cried. Because love, even when it's poison, leaves deep roots. The doctors warned us. Physical recovery would be long, but the emotional damage might take a lifetime. Chloe had been programmed for so long to believe food was evil, that weight meant failure, that love was conditional on staying small. She had to learn everything again. How to eat, how to feel hunger without fear, how to trust that survival didn't mean betrayal. After 3 weeks in ICU, Chloe was transferred to a specialized facility for eating disorders. It was expensive, far beyond what we could afford, but Aunt Julie stepped in, offering to help cover the costs. "I should have seen it," she said through tears. "I thought your mother was just strict. I didn't realize." Insurance covered some of the treatment, but Dad emptied his savings, and I drained what remained of my college fund without hesitation. I picked up a part-time job tutoring and sent every spare dollar to the clinic. Even Madison, quietly and without ceremony, contributed to the fund, still wrecked by guilt. The facility had strict rules: no outside food, limited visitors, group therapy every day, individual sessions, supervised meals. Chloe hated it at first, called crying, begged Dad to bring her home. But the staff were kind and patient. Slowly, she started to engage. A therapist helped her journal, trace the origins of her fears. She began to understand that her worth wasn't measured in calories or pounds. I returned to school with the prosecutor's assurance that I wouldn't face charges. My professors extended grace, lifting my academic probation. But I couldn't focus. Every assignment felt like a distraction from Chloe's fight. Meanwhile, Mom's trial date was set for 6 months out. Her lawyer filed motion after motion, trying to delay. From jail, Mom sent manic letters to news outlets, churches, even family friends, claiming she was a martyr, a victim of the fat acceptance cult. She insisted society would one day thank her for saving her daughters from the disease of obesity. Her supporters, those who hadn't fled when the truth surfaced, visited her occasionally, but always left looking rattled. Without her carefully curated facade, Mom had become unhinged. She ranted about Chloe's weight, about betrayal, about how I had ruined everything. No one could deny the madness anymore. 3 months into treatment, Chloe had a breakthrough. During a family therapy session, she looked me in the eye for the first time since waking in the ICU. Her voice was quiet, steady. "I knew the pills were making me sick," she said. "But I took them anyway because when I was dying, she paid attention to me." Her words struck like a blade.
Dad wept openly.
The therapist helped us navigate the guilt, the confusion, the heartbreak. We were all healing, each in different stages, and visited monthly, sharing her own recovery story, how it had taken her decades to reclaim her body, to separate love from control. She became Chloe's beacon, a promise that healing was possible. Still, progress wasn't linear. Chloe had days where she shut down, refused meals, overexercised. But she was fighting. And for the first time in years, I believed she might win. 5 months after Mom's arrest, the prosecutor called with a firm update. She'd agreed to plead guilty to multiple charges of child endangerment and assault in exchange for a reduced sentence, minimum of 8 years, maximum of 12, with no possibility of contact with Chloe until she turned 25, and even then, only if Chloe initiated it, which none of us believed she ever would. "It's over," Dad said, voice hollow as he hung up the phone, but we both knew better. It would never truly be over, not with the weight of what had been done to us, not with the echoes that still lived in the corners of our minds. The facility recommended Chloe remain in treatment for a full year, and no insurance covered part of it. The rest fell to us, and somehow, we made it work. Dad picked up extra shifts, I worked evenings and weekends, Aunt Julie organized a fundraiser at her church that brought in more than we expected. Even Madison, still draped in guilt and fragile apologies, contributed quietly through a mutual friend. Chloe's weight inched upward, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily, and with it came other changes. The dullness in her eyes began to lift, replaced by sparks of curiosity and sarcasm I hadn't seen since we were kids. Her hair grew back thicker, her skin gained warmth again, but the real shift wasn't physical. It was the moment she asked to cut up her own apple during a supervised meal and said, "I want to feel safe doing this." I cried that night, not because she was eating, but because for the first time, she was claiming something for herself. Mom's sentencing came on a rainy Tuesday. We didn't go. Dad said showing up would only give her the attention she craved. Instead, we spent the day at the treatment facility playing board games with Chloe and watching reruns of the cartoons we loved as kids. That night, the news ran a brief segment. They quoted Mom's courtroom statement, how she expressed no remorse, only a haunting monologue about saving us from society's lies about health. She blamed the courts, the doctors, even the food industry. Her delusion was complete. But the judge had seen through it. The verdict was final. And still, somehow, that didn't feel like victory. Chloe's fight wasn't over. Every day, she faced her reflection and the programming that had taught her that to survive meant to disappear. She'd stare at a plate of food and visibly calculate whether she was worth the nourishment. Some days she succeeded. Some days she cried. I watched her rebuild herself from ashes, not into the girl she used to be, but someone new. Someone who could say no, who could ask questions, who wasn't afraid to be seen. I returned to college full-time in the spring, still tethered to her through daily check-ins and weekend visits. Professors were patient. Friends slowly came back around. The lies Mom had spread about my volatility, my instability, faded as the truth gained traction. People apologized. Some didn't. That was fine. I was no longer living for their validation. Chloe wrote me a letter that April. It wasn't long. Just 3 sentences scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Thank you for saving me. I don't remember everything, but I remember you never gave up." Her hair grew back thicker, her skin gained warmth again, but the real shift wasn't physical. It was the moment she asked to cut up her own apple during a supervised meal and said, "I want to feel safe doing this." I cried that night, not because she was eating, but because for the first time, she was claiming something for herself. Mom's sentencing came on a rainy Tuesday. We didn't go. Dad said showing up would only give her the attention she craved. Instead, we spent the day at the treatment facility playing board games with Chloe and watching reruns of the cartoons we loved as kids. That night, the news ran a brief segment. They quoted Mom's courtroom statement, how she expressed no remorse, only a haunting monologue about saving us from society's lies about health. She blamed the courts, the doctors, even the food industry. Her delusion was complete. But the judge had seen through it. The verdict was final. And still, somehow, that didn't feel like victory. Chloe's fight wasn't over. Every day, she faced her reflection and the programming that had taught her that to survive meant to disappear. She'd stare at a plate of food and visibly calculate whether she was worth the nourishment. Some days she succeeded.
Some days she cried.
I watched her rebuild herself from ashes, not into the girl she used to be, but someone new. Someone who could say no, who could ask questions, who wasn't afraid to be seen. I returned to college full-time in the spring, still tethered to her through daily check-ins and weekend visits. Professors were patient. Friends slowly came back around. The lies Mom had spread about my volatility, my instability, faded as the truth gained traction. People apologized. Some didn't. That was fine. I was no longer living for their validation. Chloe wrote me a letter that April. It wasn't long. Just 3 sentences scrawled in shaky handwriting. Thank you for saving me. I don't remember everything, but I remember you never gave up. That matters. I kept that note in my wallet, next to my ID, like proof that I hadn't imagined it all, that everything we'd gone through is real, and that something beautiful had come from the wreckage. Madison reached out again, asking if she could visit. This time, Chloe agreed. They sat across from each other in the facility's family garden, sunlight on their faces, and Chloe listened in silence as Madison apologized, explained the manipulation, the coercion, the guilt. When she finished, Chloe just nodded and said, I don't forgive you yet, but I believe you want to make it right. Madison cried. We all did. The therapist called it integration. When the story stops being just trauma and starts being something you can understand, shape, even share. And visited again in June, bringing a photo album of her own recovery, pictures of her at various stages, smiling in clothes that actually fit, holding her own daughter, laughing freely. She gave it to Chloe, who held it in trembling hands. You're proof I can survive this, Chloe whispered, and smiled. No, sweetheart. You're the proof. That summer, Chloe was allowed a weekend pass to come home. We prepped for it like a holiday, cleaned every room, stocked the fridge with approved foods, removed anything triggering. When she arrived, the house felt different, lighter somehow. We played music, cooked together, took short walks. She was quiet but present, and when she laughed, really laughed, it felt like church bells after a long winter. She told me, that night before bed, sometimes I still hear her voice in my head, but it's quieter now. I told her, one day it'll just be an echo. She nodded. That's what I want. Just an echo. And in that moment, I believed she'd get there. Chloe returned to the facility after that weekend, stronger in ways that no scale could measure, and when I hugged her goodbye, she didn't flinch or apologize for taking up space. She just held on tight and said, I'm coming home for good next time. And she did. 2 months later, after a full year in treatment, Chloe was discharged. Her care plan remained intensive, weekly therapy, monitored meals, physical rehab, but she was coming home, and that was something we hadn't dared believe would happen a year earlier. We converted the guest room into a recovery-friendly space, soft colors, 0 mirrors, affirmation cards taped to the closet, a mini fridge for meal supplements, and a whiteboard where she could write how she was feeling each morning. The first thing she wrote was, I'm scared, but I'm here. It was enough. Progress was slow, as expected. There were nights when she cried through dinner, mornings when her hands shook pouring cereal, but she kept showing up, kept trying, and every time she whispered, I don't know if I can do this, we reminded her that she already was. I stayed home that semester to help, finishing classes online. Dad made dinners now, real meals, using recipe books designed for recovery. He even made mistakes, once serving salad too early, once undercooking rice, but Chloe laughed instead of panicking, and we all breathed easier. Her body was healing, her weight normalizing, but her eyes, that's where the transformation lived. By winter, she'd started painting again. By spring, she was applying to college. Not because we suggested it, but because she wanted to study psychology and help kids like her. "I want to be what I needed," she told her therapist, and that sentence alone made every nightmare we'd lived through worth the fight. As for Mom, her trial had come and gone like a ghost train. We didn't attend the sentencing, didn't read the news articles, didn't care to hear what lies she might still be telling. What mattered was that she was gone legally, physically, emotionally. Her letters from prison were returned unopened. She wasn't a part of our lives anymore, and we made peace with the silence she left behind. Aunt Julie remained a steady support, even helping Chloe file a victim impact statement through the prosecutor's office, a scathing, powerful letter that outlined the depth of the betrayal, the damage done, and the cost of survival. "This is for me," Chloe said. "Not her." And she was right. Her healing didn't hinge on anyone else's remorse. It belonged entirely to her. Madison became a background character again, sending occasional messages of support, but never pushing her way in. I appreciated that.
Some scars just needed time.
College resumed for me the following fall in full swing, and I balanced lectures with check-ins, FaceTime calls with Chloe, who'd learned how to cook exactly 2 dishes and was very proud of them both. Dad began dating again. Not seriously, but enough to remind him that life still had sweetness to offer. And Chloe? She danced once, alone in the living room, a clumsy, joyful sway to a Taylor Swift song while folding laundry. I didn't say anything, just watched, quietly crying into the couch cushion. She was free, not healed completely, but free enough to laugh, to stretch, to be silly without fear. That's what survival looked like, ordinary moments that used to be impossible. A year after Mom's arrest, Chloe gave a talk at a local school about eating disorders. She stood at the podium, thin but healthy, nervous but determined, and she said, "I almost didn't make it. But someone loved me enough to break the rules to save me." And in that moment, everything I'd risked, every sleepless night, every courtroom panic, every photo I'd taken in secret, felt like the smallest price imaginable for what I'd gained. My sister back. Today, we live quietly. No drama. No headlines. Just days stacked like pebbles, one after the other, sturdy and small and real. I still keep Chloe's 3-sentence letter in my wallet. I still sleep with my phone under my pillow, just in case she needs me. And every now and then, when the fear creeps in, when I wonder if the past might still reach out and grab us, I